Here's the extended forecast, and you see tomorrow, possibility of snow. And if not then, a couple of days later, almost definitely. That's the first snowfall of the year here in Chicago. And snow means salt. And salt means that the Ferrari has to be put away for the winter. Okay, now we put plastic sheeting on the floor. Full tank. All right, so the car is a full tank, and you fill the tank and also put in fuel stabilizer. I use this stuff. I use seafoam, although there are other additives that function the same way. And I poured half the bottle in when I filled, and now that it's filled, I'm just going to put the rest of the bottle. Okay, before I jack the car up, I'm going to loosen the lug nuts because I'm going to take off all the wheels. 22 millimeter. Other side. Okay, underneath the car, and we would drain the oil, the engine oil. So on these old Ferraris, you see this olio cambio. It's the cambio, the change is not oil change, it's the gear change. So that's the gearbox oil. We don't want to touch that. But what we want to do is go over to the engine sump. And there you find, which I think it says olio motore, I believe. And so we just undo that nut. Ah, Rambo's. Okay, remove the oil filter. The filter. Changing the oil filter in a Ferrari is the easiest car in the world to do that. Couldn't be easier. Don't even have to do it that tight because it's not going to fall off. So keep it right like that. Okay, filling the second gallon of motor oil. The capacity on this car, I think, is 3.6 gallons. So I'll put 2 gallons in. That'll be enough for the winter storage. To check the level, actually, it's kind of tricky in these cars. You have actually reading the dipstick on the Mondial is actually surprisingly not straightforward. And also, the car has to be warmed up. You have to get it to temperature and let it sit for 15 minutes. And then you take the reading on the dipstick to get an accurate reading. So I'm not going to start the car up. It's going to be just sitting here cold for the rest of the winter. And then in the spring, I'll start it up, and then I'll start it up with the 2 gallons in it, and then I can check and see if I have to add any more. It's always better to underfill than overfill, actually. Okay, to get to the clutch, to bleed the clutch, I have to remove the inner wheel well. And first, this attaches a hose. It's a bracket for a hose, and I'll remove that first, 10 millimeters. Okay, before we do anything else, I'm going to empty the old brake fluid out of the reservoir here, or at least the most of it, and going to use a turkey baster. And then when always using brake fluid, it's corrosive. It attacks paint, so make sure that any painted surface really has no risk of coming into contact with the brake fluid. Okay, what I'm going to be using to bleed the brake system and the clutch is a power bleeder, and I just bought this one, this Motive one, and it's replacing an older one I had. And comparing the two, one thing that I'm not so sure about the new one is that it's basically got this sort of fitting here, this plastic fitting, and then it's got a sort of brass fitting which connects to, if we go over here, I've attached it came with this cap that screws right onto my brake cylinder, and it's got another brass fitting which they go in. Easy enough, right? You screw the female plug from the bleeder onto that. The problem is, this is all, they don't swivel, so, to attach this doesn't swivel, so I, screwed this on. This one doesn't swivel, and so in order to rig this thing all up together, it's going to be sort of like screwing on a light bulb by rotating the lamp, if that makes any sense. My fear is that these things will just, you turn them and it'll just twist around. So I'm sure I can finagle that, but I'm surprised actually that these Motive bleeders don't have any sort of, swivel joint. That would make sort of installing it a lot easier. Okay, I've got my power bleeder set up here. Reservoir filled with fresh fluid. Hose here, there's a fitting here, goes all the way here, down to the power bleeder, and I've got a quart of fresh fluid in the bleeder, and then I will pressurize it, pump it up to, I think around maybe around 8 or 10 psi. I don't think it really needs anything more than that. 15 is the absolute max. Maybe 12 would be good, but I don't think you need a whole lot of pressure. I think even 5 would probably do it. Okay, it's right around 8 or 9, around there, and that should do it. If we can always increase it if I don't get any flow on the bleeder valves. Okay, so let's go to the back of the car and see how that goes. Okay, so there we have my 7mm wrench on the bleeder screw. This is the wheel furthest away from the reservoir, so the right side rear just move around like that, and then I have my catch container just fits on like this. And so what we should see is we should see some flow if I crack this up. I have enough pressure. So fluid is flowing into my reservoir. You can hear it. Close it up. It's coming up fairly clear, so that's good. This was probably done recently, so that's all good. Okay, I think that's enough on that wheel. It's really coming out clear. Okay, rear left wheel. My apologies for the blower you hear in the background. I hate those things, they should be banned. Alright, screw on top. I don't know if I've cracked this one yet. Put that in. Okay, I've had enough. Okay, I'm under the left-hand rear wheel well, and I'm looking for the slave cylinder of the clutch slave cylinder to bleed that. And the question is, where is it? Okay, so we have the drop gear housing right there, and you have to go underneath. You see it right there. There's my clutch slave cylinder. So it's not completely inaccessible. You see the sort of the rubber housing, and on top of it you should see a bleed screw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my wrench and my drain tube on top of that, and hopefully it will fit. There's not much room to work with, but I will make it happen. Okay, there's a good view. There's my wrench sort of hanging off there. Okay, open the bleeder screw and you can see maybe it's a little bit of fluid emptying into my bottle from the slave cylinder. It's not coming out that fast. I can't turn my wrench as far as I was with the brakes, so it might be a slower process, which I won't film and bore you all, but we're getting something out of there. People talk about the crappy build quality of Italian cars, but one thing I love about the Ferrari is that everything screws together. You don't have any stupid plastic clips or anything. You just have these screws. You can remove this panel a gazillion times. And the last step is to attach these dangling hoses. There's one that's got a clip that goes like that, and then there's another one. Okay, so one goes there, and the other one goes on top. And then there's a nut that goes in between them, okay? All right, there you go. There are the two hoses. And if I can find that nut. Okay, this is the last wheel, the left front. Crack the bleeder screw. Okay guys, here's the fluid that I removed, and as you can see, it's not that clear, which is good. It means it was a good thing that I did it. It's pretty, it could be worse, but it's not fresh fluid. Okay guys, whenever I put my cars away, I like to remove the battery. You don't have to, but it's kind of good just to have, you know, I live in Chicago, it gets cold here, and I always remove the battery from the car, bring it indoors where it doesn't experience the extreme cold, and put it on a trickle charger. Now with the Ferrari, removing the battery isn't quite so straightforward. You see it here in the front of it's in the front of the car, right by it's sort of the nose of the car on the right side. And then it's got a kind of an access panel, which just snaps into, there, see there's an access panel here. However, you see here that you can access the terminals here, and I'll remove the negative terminal before, well actually both terminals, before removing it. However, you can't remove it from here. And what you have to do, which I will do, is you have to remove it from the inside rear wheel well. So you have to jack up the car and remove the wheel, which I've done. And you see here's an access panel right under the front of the car. There are 3 screws. There's 1, 2, 3. Remove those. This panel will come off, and then I can remove the battery from there. Okay, the terminals, the clamps are held on with a 10mm wrench. Put a towel there just so the negative terminal doesn't contact the post and give me a shock. Okay, 10mm socket on a 1/4 inch 1/4 inch socket driver. Where the hell am I? Okay, removing the access panel. And there's the battery. Battery out. The last step in the winterizing process is I fill up all my tires to 40 psi, and that's to if it sits for long enough to prevent flat spots from developing on the tires. For 3 months it's probably not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. So like that. Okay, that's it. The car's in hibernation for the winter.